Many skeptics and atheists like to say that the Gospels and the Bible in general are just collections of myths, but the internal evidence of the Bible shows us that that isn't true. I'm going to be playing some Squad Busters gameplay in the background while I talk about this. The first reason why the Gospels are reliable is that they're early testimony, and this isn't about the contents of the Gospels. It's just that we know that they were copied accurately because the Gospels were written very early. The evidence shows us that they were written at 40 to 70 AD, and we know that they were all written before 70 because the destruction of the temple happened in 70, and Jesus predicted that. So if they and it was a huge event, like it was bigger than 9/11. If a book about the Twin Towers was written and it didn't mention 9/11, you would assume that it was written before September 11, 2001. Because it doesn't mention that pivotal event. And this is the same thing. This was bigger than 9/11. This was worse than 9/11. It was the center of the Jewish life for like many years, like almost a century, and then it was destroyed in a conflict. And Jesus predicted that, and they would have definitely said that. And many of them could be written earlier. We know Luke is written before 60 because we know Acts is written before 62 because of other eyewitness details, and Luke was written before it, which means we know Luke is written sometime before 60, and Mark has the potential to be the earliest, with some estimates saying it was even in the 30s, but the regular estimates say that Mark was probably it was probably after 40, but Mark is the earliest. There's also eyewitness testimony. The Gospel of John alone contains 59 historically confirmed or verifiable details, such as names, places, and customs, and it does so with incredible accuracy. It also clearly distinguishes between names, such as James, brother of John, James, brother of Jesus, and they also implicate real historical figures in the stories, which I mean, aren't stories. That's what they're saying as stories, but skeptics and atheists say that they're just stories, but they implicate real historical figures. Like if I wrote a book and if it was a story, I wouldn't say, "Oh, Donald Trump did something in this story." No, I wouldn't say that because that would implicate a real historical figure into that story, and I wouldn't do that because it's a fictional story. But they implicate real historical figures such as Pontius Pilate and many others. They also include themselves in the narrative, indicating firsthand experience. And Paul's letters reference over 500 witnesses to the resurrection. How would you not know that unless you were an eyewitness? And he was saying like, hey, they're alive. If you want to ask them, go ahead. There's also embarrassing testimony, which means that they include the details that wouldn't like make sense if they were trying to frame themselves in a certain way. If they were trying to frame themselves as heroic people who always believed Jesus and didn't hide, well, they did hide. That's what they that's what they say in the Gospels. They portray themselves not as like heroic people who always stood by Jesus, and they had women be the first people who find the tomb, which their evidence wasn't even admissible in court. And they also included difficult sayings of Jesus, and like difficult saying, and like when Jesus called Peter Satan, like that, like those things. You wouldn't include that if you were trying to frame Jesus in a certain way either. They also endured torture, persecution, and martyrdom for their claims. All of them, except for John, were all killed for being Christian. And why would the eyewitnesses die for something that they know isn't true? Many people die for something they don't know is true, but the eyewitnesses won't because they will know if it was a lie, and they know it was true, so they died for it. There's also expected testimony where the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus fulfill numerous Old Testament prophecies. Some estimates say over 60, and some examples include his birth in Bethlehem, lineage from David, being born in the tribe of Judah, and his suffering servant role from Isaiah 53. And there's also extra biblical testimony, which I made another video about, which you can check out at the end of it. But there's sources like Josephus, Tacitus, and others that mention Jesus and early Christians and have a storyline that is very congruent with the New Testament, and they confirm key facts like that Jesus lived, died, was worshipped as divine shortly after his death. And even though they don't say he resurrected, because they wouldn't believe that, the rest of the storyline all lines up. Thank you for watching. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. What is going to happen to predictability? The milkman, the pepper, the urban server.